Hello, friends. Welcome to John's Comics with no, not the kids. Friends tonight. Friends. Welcome to another Omnibus review and breakdown. I've been doing just having a blast doing a ton of these on my channel. I've even made an epic playlist. I think we're at almost 30 videos in and around my channel, but with me reviewing various Omnibus. And it's been a great way to enjoy the things I've been buying and the experience I've had reading them. And the troublemaker who I've been really cavorting with the most in this endeavor has been this guy, JP.
I want to say friends seems a little strong.
It's a bold word. It's a bold word.
No, we've been working our way through some of these little books we've been working our way through. So
yeah, we've had a lot of fun, a lot of reading in the last year, just across Marvel, DC, kind of bouncing back and forth. And I've been looking forward to this one because I read it and did some reviews on it last year, or maybe even the year before that. But I know you read a portion of it a while back and had never finished it.
Yeah, I read years ago when Kavi and I used to do the Gotham City Chronicles thing where we did all the Batman stories, and we did like 30 episodes of that before we kind of things with him changed and everything else, and it kind of filtered away. We did the first trade. We did the book one, the first trade, and it's the first 10 issues, I think.
Yep.
And because it's got the story arc with Renee and Two-Face, and so yeah, it's got, or maybe it's not quite 10 issues, but anyway, the first couple.
No, it's exactly 10. Yeah, it's
okay. And so
it's Freeze, it's Firebug, and it's Two-Face.
Yes. So I had read that and never went back to it. I really, really enjoyed it. Never went back to it. When I seen that they had an Omni of the entire 40-issue run, I was like, I need to read this at some point. I need to read the rest of it. So it was my excuse to get it and read the rest of it. So.
And I'm going to apologize now because I'm cutting in and out, so you must be cutting. I'm probably getting all choppy right now.
You're a little choppy at the moment. You're a little volume stuff. So basically, yeah, this is a 40-issue run. Anybody who hasn't read this is NYPD Gotham. It's a story arc very much focused. It's a series focused on the major crimes unit that we get, that is part of like the Gotham Police, that was created by Gordon, that deals with all the freaks that comes up in Gotham, the police side of things. Batman is a character or kind of this thing, this presence that is throughout this book. But it's very much focused on these cops, these detectives that are trying to deal with all of this and the trials and tribulations and tragedy of trying to be a good cop in Gotham when you're dealing with people like Freeze and Two-Face and the Joker. And, as it goes through this, we get Mad Hatter at one point. We get a bunch of the villains and the cops trying to balance between, understanding that they sort of need Batman's help, but not really wanting it and not really wanting to accept that they need it. And so.
It's a tenuous relationship, the
Yes.
Gotham Police and Batman, and they're very divided on, we need him, do we want him, do we like him, do we distrust him, do we arrest him? Like there's a lot of debate going on at all levels in the police department.
Yeah, and this is a period when there's no Gordon to be that connection between the two, and so Gordon has retired. This is post there's a story arc in the early 2000s where he gets shot and he retires and everything else. And he's not a part of the police department. Harvey's been kicked out of the police department. We see sort of why later, because he does make an appearance to Bullock.
We mean Harvey Bullock, not Harvey Dent.
Harvey Bullock, yes. So the other Harvey, not the Harvey Dent.
Because Harvey Dent in year one is a Batman proponent and helped the Batman. Yes. But we're talking about Harvey Bullock, the character you might know from the animated series.
Yes. So no Bullock, no Gordon, rest of the cops, and it's centered on like Renee Montoya and her partner who was a character I didn't really know before I read the original volume. Maggie Stewart, who was actually originally like in Superman books and went to Gotham and is now in Bloodhaven if you read the current comics.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, she's currently the commissioner in Bloodhaven. So so she's bounced around quite a bit, and she's been tied to a bunch of characters. And then a bunch of detectives that I had no history with.
Because I'm trying to remember her partner. It's like Crispus or Chris something.
Crispus, yeah. Gosh dang it.
At one point, they give you a breakdown because there are a lot of characters to keep track of in this series. That's one of the challenges.
For sure. So you seem to be coming through okay here now, John. You ready to? I kind of just was talking because you were.
I appreciate it. You might need to be doing a little more of that duty tonight. But we'll see. Let's say hello to the chat like we like to do. What's up, Ruben Guzman? Early in, appreciate you, sir. We got Phil Ailing coming in hot. Must have had that notification bell clicked. I appreciate you, sir. It is, and continues to be some Robot John in here, Perry. I appreciate you, friend. This is Ed Brubaker. Yeah, Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka are the kickoff team, but Brubaker sticks with it longer than Rucka, if I'm not mistaken. And then Michael Lark, who is often drawing for Brubaker, is doing art here. Along with others, obviously, with an anthology series, it does rotate artists.
40 issues, we get multiple artists, we get multiple. Yeah. So.
And Old Wolf is in the chat. What's going on? Tony, I got my Old Wolf shirt on, man. How you doing, buddy? So yeah, I guess the big thing for people to understand, I'll start off with my overview. It's excellent. This is fantastic. And you could stop watching this show right now and go and buy it and then enjoy it and read it, because it is top tier universe of Batman reading. It is really, really entertaining, but it is packed. It is jam packed. These 40 issues cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, about 15 stories, about 15 plot lines. Some of them short, like one issue, some of them longer, like 5-issue stories. But there's a ton of them, and they skip around to different teams of cops, and characters might come in and out. And so it's really like an anthology in some ways, but as somebody who generally doesn't like those kinds of stories, I was riveted every time. And this is probably the 3rd or 4th time I've read it.
Right.
I had read a little bit of it when getting to know the character of Renee Montoya as the Question. I was like, oh, I want to hear this other story. And of course I was a Brubaker and a Rucka fan, so this was primed for me. And then I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And then since then, I read it again for a show, and now I've read it a 3rd time for this show this evening. So I am a big fan of this. And every time I read it, I've picked up new stuff and gathered more understanding of kind of the interconnections going on here. So I'm curious for you, first time reading the entire thing, how you felt about it.
I enjoy it a lot. I think it's really, really, really well done. They make you care about these detectives in a way that, like, quickly, you don't get. I mean, you get a lot of time over the course of the series. You get a lot of time with Renee and Crispin Allen, her partner. It's Allen. I remembered after the thing, and Detective Driver and Rory, and like some of these. Josie who comes in kind of in the middle as a replacement at one point, and like you get a lot of time with a lot of these characters to like see their trials and tribulations and struggles as being cops, but also how they're affected by dealing with the Bat and his villains, and how and it's told in a way that like these are people trying to do good. Although there are some villains in here that are, because Gotham's police are known for being corrupt. That is, a big part of it. And, and they're dealing with their lives. And, we get a story arcs about Renee and her personal life. And we get one of the detectives is hiding the fact that she has some sort of abilities that she doesn't fully understand, but she can use, and she's like hiding that from everyone. And we get but mostly we just got a lot of really good cop show. Like if you love cop dramas, there's a lot of really good just cop procedural drama stuff here. And it's
fans of like CSI or Law and Order or any of those kinds of shows, NYPD Blue, You're going to get that in full force in comic book form.
Yes.
And let's be honest, Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker are champions of the, noir detective genre.
Yes.
And to have the two of them and Michael Lark for the most part on art, you're guaranteed quality.
Yeah.
So
no,
good.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it as much as me. What we're going to do for the next hour really is kind of jump through different storylines that we want to talk about, different maybe character arcs and plot lines that we want to get into. So those of you hanging with us can chime in about characters or arcs, or let us know what you think, or just enjoy the conversation we're going to have in and around the details of this. What's up, Kenneth Bird? I appreciate you, sir. So we'll go chronologically through the storyline. The first three, you said this is your second time reading them, so we don't maybe need to spend as much time if you don't want to on these. But I will say the third one is kind of vital and hugely important overall. The first one is, I think it kicks off beautifully. It has to do with two questionably corrupt, possibly cops knocking on a door, doing a search, and they happen to bump into Mr. Freeze, and it's to deadly effect. Like he unloads on them, and then the first two issues have to deal with the cops feeling like they need to find Mr. Freeze. They want to punish him for what he did to them, and there's a lot of discussions about, is Batman to blame? Do we need Batman to help us get us out of this? So those first two issues start off scary because now you're like, oh, just a random cop going up against Mr. Freeze. That's pretty intense. What are your thoughts on that storyline?
So I think it's a bold choice in terms of where they did it, and I think it works, and it makes the series. It's why the series works. Is that we start with Detective Driver and his partner, like characters we don't know. Like I wasn't reading when this came out, but I'd read a lot. This is literally right after I stopped reading, like when I was stopped reading consistently, like Batman books.
Okay.
And had just gotten out of it. And so, like, Montoya was a character I knew going in, but she was really about the only one. Maggie I knew of, but they don't start with Montoya. She's in the background. But this is Detective Driver. They get a tip. They're basically searching for a kidnapping victim. They get a tip. They're technically off the clock. Like they're done, and they go to knock on the door, and Mr. Freeze opens the door, and it's like not what they were looking for.
Yeah, and he just starts shooting right away, and they
kill the driver's partner.
Yeah,
and the rest of these two arc is Driver and the rest of the MCU. Which is fun. It's Major Crimes Unit. It's not.
It's not Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's Major Crimes. If you watched Law and Order, it'd be Law and Order Criminal Intent. Like it's basically like that show with detectives working special cases, right?
Yes.
And in particular, it's called the Freak Beat, right? Yes. The people that are investigating super powered or superhero related characters.
Yeah, and the rest of these two issues are about these cops hunting a super-powered villain who killed a cop, and it's like they're chasing a cop killer, and they're balancing their need to be the ones to get him with the fact that like maybe they need the bat on it, and trying to and it's like no, it has to be us. It can't be the bat. It can't be the bat, and then ultimately they end up having to get the bat's help because they realize what Freeze's plan is, and they're not equipped to stop it. So,
what's up, Gordon?
So I thought it was a great introduction to what this is going to be, like in a 2-issue arc of what this. It gives you. It sets the tone for what the rest of this book is going to be.
Yeah. And then the second arc, I mean, we can go back and forth if you need. The second arc is dealing with the kidnapping, and it's with the character of Firebug, who was a smaller villain and is in jail, and it's more about like his costume in the hands of somebody else, and the team of detectives trying to figure out who is dressing as Firebug, who is doing these things, and how does this relate to the kidnapping?
Yeah, and it's focused on Driver again. He's kind of the main thing, but like there's some other cops that are helping him because his partner's gone, and he's supposed to be off, but he's like, I need to finish this kidnapping thing. Now that Bat took care of Freeze, I need to close the book on this kidnapping before we go. And they find out the girl is dead, like that and probably was dead before the kidnapping call ever happened.
Right.
Like that was more of a cover than for whatever happened than anything else. And they go down this road of like trying to figure out who was responsible. And they basically find a guy who's bought this suit and like using it to try to and the girl found it. That's basically what happened. Yeah. She was babysitting for him and he found it. And yeah, so that's but no, I think it's really well done. Like this
I like the way they lay out the cases and the evidence and the clues that the detectives follow. I like the personalities they give these detectives because they're all flawed in interesting ways and carrying their own baggage and things. So it makes it a very riveting tale. I think there's a lot of notes that they play here. It's not a very one-note book. You might think detective noir, this is going to be very repetitive, but it never feels that way. No. Each time we get a new, I don't want to say big bad, but sort of like case or a new link to the greater Batman universe, it adds a fun new layer here.
And we get different detectives working with different detectives. Like they mix up the teams through circumstances to make it make sense. That gives you all these different interactions of these officers working, these cops working together, these detectives working together, and so that you get a little bit of all their personalities, and it varies depending on who they're working with and how they work, and and in this we get like basically Rory is working with Driver at this point, and they kind of have a little bit of feelings for each other, but they get set on this homeless guy, and they're like. They go to take him down, and then they realize, no, he's not. This is not a bad guy. This was, and like going through figuring out who it is and doing the steps that it takes, and even kind of setting the guy up once they figure out what the plan is to like get what they need. From him. So,
yeah, you get a real sense of how intelligent these detectives are, despite the fact that you might think in Gotham they just sit on their rears and let Batman do everything. These are effective detectives, and they do quality work when they're on the right side of the law, which may only be half the time.
Well, it's not half the time. It's just there's still a bunch of bad eggs in the department that they have to
do. Yeah.
And one of the underlying themes is we'll go through there is like every time they're on a crime scene, like they questioning who the crime scene people are that are cataloging what's there, and like. Can we even trust the people that are taking the evidence for us? So
damn that Corrigan.
Yeah. So
all right. Well, so then that's where that's almost where you had finished. There's one storyline left.
Arc too.
Yeah. The last storyline in those first 10 issues is pivotal. And this is where Renee comes to be a vital part of the storyline, because she basically gets framed for murder. And her love life, or the reality that she's gay, gets outed to the entire police department, and someone is clearly messing with her. Meanwhile, of course, internal affairs is investigating her and feels like this might be genuine and they need to follow up with it. She ends up, getting put in jail, then gets busted out of jail by the real villain, which is the jealous former district attorney Harvey Dent, who has a thing for that Renee Montoya. He likes that Renee and is hoping to turn her in some way to liking him. And this is all his grand, awful, psychotic design.
Right. Basically, his goal is to leave her with no other options, so she has to love him. Like, I'm going to ruin your whole life so that all you have left is me.
It's like wonderfully toxic masculinity, like gone wild. This guy who can't handle no. Clearly, she's not interested in him on so many levels. And so his solution is to basically burn her life down because if I can't have her, nobody will, almost, right?
Yeah.
And it's dark, it's wild, and poor Renee gets dragged through the gutter her whole life. The internal affairs is talking to her girlfriend. She's basically in a really difficult place. What was your thoughts rereading this story, Half a Life?
So I had kind of like, and I haven't ever, like, I now have the Omnis, but I haven't went back and read it. Like, I read all of the No Man's Land, which is after the earthquake and everything else, when the town was basically lawless, and they were like, and Renee and Two-Face had teamed up for part of that. And I've kind of forgotten some of that. I still don't remember all the details there, but like, they had worked together basically when there was no law and order. It was just they had neighborhoods, and there was, gangs, and there was all this kind of stuff trying to protect people in Gotham. And so I knew there was a relationship there. But yeah, it's a sick, he's a stalker to the extreme, and he's just destroying her life. I mean, she basically comes from a family with religious parents that are like, when they find out, they just basically, they don't have a daughter anymore. And, and there's all this kind of stuff that he's doing when she's just, and she's struggling. She was already struggling, and she was pretty easy to set up because she's struggling with her anger, with like everything that's coming down on top of her. And she makes a obvious, internal affairs going after her makes sense. It's not, it's not like it's like the facts don't fit.
Right. So is there any last thoughts here on kind of how that story concludes and your feelings about it, or do you want to move on to another storyline? I know we got a lot to cover here.
We got a lot to cover, so I think we're good there. I think it's I think you covered it. Just, it's Two-Face is just like gonna do everything he can to ruin her life the best he can. And so was in between this was the story.
Yes. Stacy and her love for Batman.
And I just, not that story necessarily. There was probably
I want to mention the character of Stacy because she does have a couple of episodes and issues in here and at moments. Stacy is basically the front desk for this department, right? This portion within the police department.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the character from Brooklyn Nine-Nine that she was, reminds me of the comedic secretary that works in the office that really is sort of operating on a different wavelength, right?
Yeah.
And so we get a one shot here where she's basically talking about how she wishes she was Batman's girlfriend, and she's kind of dreaming this love story with the two of them. And then later there's a one shot, and I'm fine to like skip ahead for a second, where they take down the bat signal on top of the building, and you sort of get another little glimpse into her feeling like they have this connection, her and Batman, and feeling like this is betraying his trust in some way, because she continues to play a part where she walks this line as something of a civilian between the cops and Batman, and she's always going to be on Batman's side, but she gets her paycheck from the cops, and she knows that there are some good people here despite evidence, right?
Yeah. So you went where I wanted to go, which was that particular issue is probably one of the weaker issues of the whole thing. But Stacy as a character is a very interesting character that deserves a few minutes to talk about, because she just filters in and out of these stories in little minor bits, but she plays important roles at times. Yeah. And she's a contracted secretarial, basically. She doesn't technically work for the department. So, which is why she's the one, since Gordon is gone, they no longer acknowledge that they're working with the bat. So she turns the signal on and off. None of them the cops won't touch it.
No.
She turns it on and off, even though they then are standing there when she does it and talk to him. But it's
legally,
it can't
be a law enforcement person that legally touches the the light. It's supposed to be a civilian, and so that's like the role she fulfills. Besides, obviously being something of a secretary, she has to be the one to touch this equipment. The police have to still be able to deny the fact that this is their piece of equipment on the roof. So they have to be able to say, no, there's no police officer turning a light on, because this is true. In fact, there's a civilian doing it.
Yeah, and it's basically because the case got thrown out at one point is what they used to just as their thing is like basically. Because he's a vigilante and everything else, so they're like, no, that doesn't work. So yeah, she plays that interesting role, and I guess it's after the issue that I'm thinking of comes after the Renee story. Is the Daydreams of Believers, where she's like fantasizing about being with the Bat.
Yes, exactly. It's a Harlequin romance kind of thing with her and the Batman. So the next storyline is really adrenaline filled, and they waited, I think, very intelligently to use the Joker until 11 issues into their run, almost a year of making this comic before they decided to bring the Joker in. And they have this wonderful sniper storyline, right? This concept of like a killer on the loose in the city with a rifle taking shots at people, and it's sort of the Joker madman, you never know where he's going to strike storyline. And I like it a ton. I think it's Joker light, because it's always the fear of when he'll strike. He only really shows up significantly in one of the 4 issues, but when he does, it gives me these wonderful, I mean, he looks very much Jack Nicholson, but he acts very much Mark Hamill for me. It's definitely not Heath Ledger, but he is violent. What are your thoughts on Joker? Because this is obviously the first kind of major news story.
Other than like, I felt that it was weird for him to be doing like sniper stuff.
Sure,
like, that was the one disconnect in this. But
is he a good shot? Is the
like he's working as a sniper just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. That doesn't seem like his MO. He seems to want to be up in it, but in terms of the way he manipulates everything that's going on, and like where's he going to be next, and what's going on, and it's all really leading to something that has nothing to do with being a sniper. It's basically like he's just setting him up to get him to chase his tail so that he can basically get caught, which is, so you see where Christopher Nolan stole his let's get caught storyline from.
Right. Well, and there's a sniper sequence in Dark Knight where he's got the gun, and he was trying to kill Gordon, right?
Yeah. And so it worked really, really well as a Joker story because, like you said, it's light on the Joker. I mean, the first sequence is the commissioner and the mayor talking, and then the mayor gets blown away. And it's a while before you realize, like, it's at least the second issue before you even realize it's the Joker. Like, who's, like, the one doing this and, like, bumping these people off. And it leads to ultimately a great conflict at the end as he set up he's got everybody, like, off the streets for a couple of days before Christmas. And then he gets caught conveniently, like, the day before Christmas, so everyone has to go out and try to do all their shopping that they haven't been doing right at the last minute, and he's planted a bomb, which is, that he's gonna, but it also leads to this great conflict, and we never see what happens because we never talk, like Bruce never, like, they talk to Batman, but we never get Batman's perspective on anything.
No.
And so there's a cop that's trying to save this reporter that the Joker's taken captive with the bomb, and the Batman shows up, and we don't know what happens. The bomb goes off, the cop dies, the reporter and Batman live, and it sets up a ton of the conflict between the police and Batman the rest of the story because his partner lives, and she's a major part of the rest of the story, and nobody knows what happened.
Yeah, and the next story arc begins with the funeral for the cop and leads us closer to the bat signal being removed and kind of the politics going on there for some of that stuff. Brother Joe is in the chat. Brother Joe, I'm looking forward to, as always, the way you sing us into every Blame Fable show Friday night. You are such an awesome dude, man. So I'm excited to hear whatever song you're preparing for Friday. So yeah, the sniper story, very entertaining. The next story is called Life is Full of Disappointments. It's a 3-issue story with it's more about like chemicals, like a poison chemical, in the city. But it's supervillain light. It's not as supervillain heavy. I don't know that I have a ton to say about it. It's entertaining, but is there anything you wanted to mention about that story? Because the next one is my favorite, I think.
I feel like that one is kind of like trying to remember exactly the details of the chemical stuff.
Batwoman shows up in it. The Huntress shows up in it.
Shows up with it, but that's really like not related, because one of the cops, it turns out, is like family to one of the crime families, like his relatives, and he doesn't want to be a part of it. And that's a thread that they kind of just drop throughout, that it like we get it here and it just drops. So that whole story arc becomes a little bit forgettable because they don't really follow up on it very well.
Right.
Like, some of the stuff they start there, like the Sarge and that cop, and some of those folks that we focus on there, we don't get as much time with them as it goes forward. So it feels a little less
vital.
Yeah. I think
we're already 30 minutes in, and I want to keep us moving. Then we're going to go to the one I want to talk about the most. And what's up, Magic Lasso? He says he loves Barbara Gordon. She ain't in this, buddy. Barbara Gordon, no Barbara Gordon here.
No Barbara Gordon Lasso. No Barbara Gordon. No Wonder Woman.
Sorry, this is Renee Montoya time. So if you want to be promoting females in Gotham, that's the one to be promoting. But this one, so here's where I went from this is really good to being like, this might be one of my favorite Batman books. Period. I love the 4-issue storyline called Unresolved, and it has to do with, at first, a hostage situation where it's happening at a restaurant, and the cops are trying to figure out what this crazy guy with the shotgun is doing, and then he kills himself, and everybody's like, this guy's kind of talking crazy. I don't know what's going on with him. The cop that went in to negotiate just is kind of traumatized by what happens. And later, when they're going over this gentleman's effects, they find a baseball cap that reminds them of another case. And inside the baseball cap is one of Mad Hatter's little mind-controlling cards. Yeah. Gang, this is what I love about it, because this is a Mad Hatter story. Firstly, they take a character that I hate. Mad Hatter is stupid. I don't know why an Alice in Wonderland character exists in Batman. It's dumb. And they make me scared of this character. Because really it's about his technology in the hands of somebody else.
Yeah.
What happens when his technology lands in other people's hands? And it's kind of like if kryptonite was bouncing around Metropolis and the impact that it has on the citizenry. In this case, this mind control tech, we get like mad bombers who don't know that they're a mad bomber. There's so many like scary concepts that brew out of these 4 issues. And this old case where there was an explosion and everybody said, like, he was such a nice boy, why would he do such a thing?
Well, they didn't even know he did it. There was some, like, nobody really knew exactly what happened. And he, like, the one survivor of this bombing is the one that ends up kills himself in the hostage situation. And like, through that, they figure out that he did it, but clearly he didn't do it. Like, he was under
the influence, right?
Yeah, he was under the influence.
Yeah.
And we see that, like, so they're going to Hatter and they're trying to figure out the backstory of what the motivation was. And this is where we get Bullock pulled back.
I was going to say Harvey Bullock makes his appearance because this is one of his cases that did not get resolved well. Obviously, it's titled Unresolved. And it's been eating away at Harvey, and he's happy to go toe-to-toe with people like the Penguin and just start throwing punches at people as a way of working through the guilt he's got over this case. This storyline has everything I wanted from this book. Like it is just jam-packed with twists I don't expect. Cops dealing with their grief. Bullock is used perfectly here. I like everything about this story. And again, it's a lot of this sticks with you, but this story, I can't picture Mad Hatter at any point and not think about this story now. It is sewn together so deeply. They took a villain I didn't like and now made me genuinely scared of him. And it's that freaking good.
Not really he's obviously a villain, but he's not really the villain of the story.
No. His technology is the villain. Yeah.
He equipped the villain with this.
Yeah.
And really what happened was this is a story of like basically lies that end up causing a tragedy, because what we find out is there was this girl this high school team that got blowed up that were like state champions. Bullock thought it had to do with gambling and this kind of stuff, and which is why he's after the Penguin, and he's off on the wrong trail that Driver and Josie end up finding. And it was basically this girl who had a super religious mom who was like very controlling of her, got in a relationship with one of the guys on the team, got pregnant, and basically lied to her mother that it was like, oh, it was non-consensual or whatever, because otherwise her mother was going to throw her out of the house. And little did this girl know that her mother was friends with the Mad Hatter before he was the Mad Hatter. And she's the one that like gets his tech and has the kids blow themselves up. It's like,
Absolutely. Yep.
So but there's a lot of great cop work in here and trying to figure out what really happened. And
it's like a cold really case kind of story. And Bullock, has this really brutal journey he goes through on this. And I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it's for me, in a book full of great stories, this is a major highlight for me.
This one is a real peak, because we get Bullock and what he's dealing with. He's not there. We get the case that they're working.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have the background of this cop that got blowed up in the thing, who's like been on life support, and basically, and they're dealing with this other cop who's mourning because this guy, during the course of the story, he dies, and there's a lot going on here for all of these characters. And
100%.
It's really, really well done.
So I just want to highlight that one. If you even find that trade unresolved or whatever somewhere, just grab it. You'll freaking love it. The next storyline is actually, for me, like partnered with the one that is the finale for the series.
Yes.
Because we meet Corrigan, and Corrigan is a crime scene tech with zero conscience. And he will sell evidence on whatever eBay he finds, whatever dark web eBay he's got. He will screw over cops. He'll let criminals go free. He is give him the money and he'll do what you want. And the cops even make that comment at different times. Like, you paid Corrigan, you're good. Don't worry, you're up.
Yeah.
You'll get away with whatever screw up you did on the job. You accidentally killed an innocent person. Don't worry. You pay Corrigan and you're fine. And you're scot-free. So the reason why I say this is connected is because this 2-issue story is called Corrigan, and the final 3-issue story is called Corrigan Part 2, or Corrigan the sequel. So we kind of get a journey for Corrigan. So I guess what I really want to say, without getting too much into the weeds, what are your thoughts on this character and how he plays out across this omnibus?
So I'd never read this. And I know the name I instantly recognize for what happens later, to like in terms of who Corrigan becomes eventually. But like, I thought this was really, these first 2 issues of basically Renee and her partner get caught in a shooting. Like, basically they come in on these guys, they see something's going on, they come in on these guys, they get shot at, they return fire, Renee's about to be killed, her partner kills the guy. Like, it's all like, even the way they tell the story, Brubaker and Rucka tell the story here, or maybe it's just Brubaker by this point, like, it's clear that like they did it right, even though it went south. Like, the bad things happened, but they did it right. But Corrigan basically comes in and takes the key piece of evidence that proves that it was right and sells it. So they don't have it anymore. And so they're getting sued, and like Internal Affairs is like, Alan is in trouble, like Renee's partner's in trouble, and there's all this stuff going on. And so we set up that, and in order to protect her partner, Renee does something sort of dumb, but because basically they have a chance to get Corrigan on this, but in order to make sure her partner gets what he deserves, which is not to be in trouble, she basically does things that makes it impossible for them to go after it at this stage.
Yeah. It almost gives Corrigan a free pass for the rest of the omnibus because the IA feels like they can't investigate him because now there's this, crack in the case against him.
Yes. Basically, Renee beats the crap out of him to get him to give up what he did.
So I will legitimately say, until 60 seconds ago, when you said he is an important character in DC, I had no clue that this character extended beyond this omnibus.
Oh, do you not know? You don't know?
So I just was like, okay, I'm going to nod at JP. I'm going to open Wikipedia. I'm going to research this. How the heck is this guy the Spectre or related to the Spectre?
So I think that was the original. And I don't remember for sure, but I think
the name of the original
name of the guy that was the Spectre.
It's Jim Corrigan. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, after Crisis, he was not, and then there was the whole thing where Hal became
DC kind of reset. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reset, and then after this is basically they tell the story where how Corrigan becomes a Spectre.
Well, I mean, I just met her, Ryan. I don't even know what's going on because this website, what I'm reading, it says that Crispus Allen becomes the Spectre at some point.
Maybe, I don't know. That I don't know. That I don't know.
Okay, so I'm fascinated by this now because this spins this story in a whole new place that I just took him as a douchebag created for this comic, but to have him extend into the DC universe,
he existed before. And if I remember correctly, like again, I've not read a ton of Spectre, but my recollection is Corrigan was the original guy who became the original Spectre back in the Silver Golden Age,
in 1940s in More Fun Comics.
Yeah, he was a bad guy. He was like a criminal that ended up becoming the spirit of becoming.
He was a deceased cop, disgraced and somewhat disgraced and deceased cop.
Yeah.
But he was black. Apparently, in some of these stories,
anyway,
in Jimmy Olsen number 149, he's black.
Yeah, we're down a rabbit hole here, but
this is wild. I'm learning a ton, but I'm like lost in it. Okay, so that's good to know. I mean, I know of the character of the Spectre. Of course, I know Hal Jordan's journey as the Spectre, but to see him now kind of rebooted as just specifically not a cop as much as a crime scene tech is interesting. Okay, good to know. Add that to my repertoire. I appreciate you educating me a little bit.
There you go.
I feel like I can save some of his storyline to the final.
We can talk about the rest of it at the end. Yeah,
right. The next is the one shot about getting rid of the bat signal, and I think we kind of touched on that one. Then we get a 2-issue story called On the Freak Beat, where Catwoman is charged with murder and has to basically help the police clear her own name.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that storyline? It was nice to have Catwoman, but it was a weaker storyline for me. Not one of my faves.
Yeah, it was not one of the better ones. I do think it was interesting in the fact that it's basically we get a lot of Josie in this one, and who's the cop that appears to have some sort of abilities.
Yeah.
And we never get a full explanation of what those are exactly. She can touch things and realize things about them, knows where the item came from, knows some history with the item. So she figures out quickly that it's not Catwoman because she touched this thing, but she can't prove it. Selena basically, and we never see if she follows like we think she does, but basically Selena says, goes through this hiding. I'm good at hiding secrets of those that I trust, which goes back to this. She knows who the bat is.
Right. Exactly.
That we see Josie going through this whole thing and how do I function with this ability and everything else, and she says the only one who suffers when you don't trust. But the thing about secrets, Josie, is when you keep them from the people you trust, the only one who suffers is you. I'll see you around, detective. And we see her call her partner at the end of this, but we don't know if she actually tells him or not.
And that's an ongoing thing where sometimes there's no resolution in this series, and I'm okay with it because it's a trope of noir where it's unsatisfying, like real life can be sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's one of the threads we see her use it again later, but it's one of those things where we don't ever get, like, we don't know what happened, what came from that.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to our last. There's only 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 storylines kind of left here. 3 major ones and 2 one-shots. The next storyline is called Keystone Cops, and it focuses on some exciting drama that happens where some bullies chase a kid into a undiscovered laboratory belonging to Dr. Alchemy. And when they happen to spill some of his vials of goo, there's a police officer who gets caught up in it and basically seems to die by being burned, only to survive long enough that they take him to the hospital, put him in stasis, and try to see if Dr. Alchemy can help heal him.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this storyline?
I thought this was good in the fact that, like, we get a lot of Renee here, and we see kind of what sets up toward the end of this, that Renee, she tries to go back to her. At one point, she tries to talk to her father again. He still won't talk to her. We see her struggling at this point with everything that's happened to her, with the changes that's been going on. And sort of we see her losing her way during the course of this story arc in terms of how she's handling it. Like what she does to Dr. Alchemy at the end in order to, she beats the crap out of him to find out what's going on because he's basically set them up, which is no surprise to anyone that, like, he double-crossed them in terms of he was going to help this guy, and instead he's just trying to, like, create his monster. It's a very tragic, like, there's literally nothing good that comes out of this entire story arc.
And I will say the reason I might put it on the weaker side as far as the big storylines go is I don't know that I understand Dr. Alchemy enough to understand. Yeah. Like, they bring him to the hospital to look over his creation, and he breaks away so easily. It's like they have no concept that either he is a weapon and just can indiscriminately use these crazy powers, or that he is concealing and carrying some kind of weapon. Yeah. And it seems too convenient to the plot that he is so easily able to then just activate his creation and go wild in this hospital. Yeah. After all the precautions and safety measures that the police put into action before they bring him to the hospital, it seems so silly that it's so easy for him to escape it. Yeah. So as the reader in me, my suspension of disbelief kind of crumbled a little with how simple that was for him. However, the stuff with Renee and her dad and of course at the end when he has to do kind of something really intense, I liked that a lot, and it was well executed on a Renee level at least.
Yes, yeah. The only thing good in this is the Renee stuff. Like the alchemy stuff is pretty weak. I mean, everything else is just bleak and dark. What happens to this cop's trying to save this kid, and everything that happens with him and his wife and his partner, like what they go through as he's going through this, it's just, it's pretty bleak. And I agree with you. Like he's just like free. It's just like, wait, what? It's a little weird, like how Dr. Alchemy gets away with it. So,
right. Okay. Then the next is a one shot, and it's, obviously I'm a Poison Ivy fan, but I enjoyed this one. As far as one shots go, this was a stronger one for me.
Yeah.
And the concept is a couple of crooked cops are trying to get their money off of a drug dealer, and there's a woman, a homeless girl in a dumpster who overhears it all and is a witness, and they have to kill her. And then they have to lie about her death and get Corrigan to cover it all up at the crime scene. What they don't know is that this woman that they just killed has ties to Ivy, and she slowly pulls them into her web so that she can execute these cops. Yeah. It's very simple. It's very functional. It brings up Corrigan yet again. It brings Ivy in a functional kind of way. It's fine that it's a one shot. So for me, if you have to have a one shot, this is, in my opinion, kind of how to do it.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a fan of them, but it works.
And I like the fact that this goes back to because it's a reminder of when this takes place in the DC, like post No Man's Land. Basically, Ivy has taken over a part of Gotham's version of Central Park, and and basically all these kids that were left orphaned and run away, and she's basically given them a shelter in the park. And like everyone's kind of the bat, and everyone's kind of just let it be at this point, and like because she's not hurting these kids, and these kids are, so they've just kind of backed off. And so we see that when somebody goes after, like, hurts one of her kids, basically the way she's looking at it, she finds a way to pull them into her vines, I guess, not her web, but her vines, and
literally,
cops, and it's all told from the perspective of the one cop, and he is so awful. Awful. The thoughts that go through his head are just like,
you want this guy to suffer.
They deal with. So maybe worse. Because he thinks he's right and justified. So
and it builds towards that satisfying conclusion where you're like, please, Poison Ivy, get this guy and just finish him off, which she does. So huzzah. Well, that leaves 3 storylines left. The next 2, first, a very big story called Dead Robin, which reminded me of the many deaths of Batman. If you guys have ever read that storyline, and then a one-shot called Sunday Bloody Sunday. The reason I mentioned them together is because they are like DC cameo, like flushed. Like these, there are so many. If you're looking for this book to finally show you capes, welcome. This is the story. These are the 2 storylines to do it. Dead Robin has to do with several times when characters show up dead in the city dressed as Robin, and our team the cops trying to decide, like, is this the real Robin? Is Batman a suspect? How do we do it? Teen Titans coming in out of the woodworks to testify and give it witness information.
Alive.
Yes, that this is not the real Robin. Batman's saying the same thing. Robin finally showing up and saying, it's not me, I swear to gosh, talking to Stacy on the roof. So, like, what were your thoughts on that storyline? Then we'll get to the Sunday Bloody Sunday.
I really enjoy this because the cops themselves are like, even if Robin comes in, do we know it's the same kid? Do we know that there's only one? Like, we don't know. And which there hasn't been only one. There's been a bunch.
And they make that comment. They're like, Robin doesn't seem to age. Maybe there's multiple Robins.
Maybe there's multiple Robins. Yeah. Robin has not gotten older. And, so they, like, the cops, like, are obviously realistically suspicious. And it's only when, and then one of the families is like, our kid is Robin. And it's just like
they go out and they continue the rumor that, like, no, your kid's Robin, and the cops have to show up and say, don't tell people that, because if it's not true, or if it is true, you've just made a target out of your own lives.
Yeah, like, what do you think the Joker is going to think when he finds out your kid was Robin? And they're like,
And they're like, personally, we don't think your kid was Robin, so let's not go around painting that target on your back.
And so, and of course we get, like, obviously, and this is a great one where the Bat is hunting, trying to find what's going on.
Yeah.
And he's bumping into the cops. And this is at the stage where the cops are not cooperating. And Romy, basically, whose partner was killed, she comes face to face with him, beating the crap out of the Penguin, and she just starts shooting. And
she does hit him. And again, I think part of the fun of this series is that we only get Batman from their perspective. So he is this kind of dark looming figure with the intense voice, and we don't know if it's a serious injury or if it's his armor protects him or whatever, but she does hit him, and then he takes her gun.
Yeah.
Which I love.
It's great because, and we haven't talked enough at this point about, I don't think, Maggie through the course of this. Like, I think Maggie is the captain of this unit.
Yeah.
Of guiding them through a lot of this and trying to balance herself between the commissioner, who's basically is the one that's like, no, we're not, take the light, take the signal down. We're not doing this no more. Like, and trying to balance her detectives. And we get the great, like, they're trying to, like, hide the fact that she lost her piece to the Batman. And we get the great moment that, like, Robin comes and talks to Stacy on the roof. So, like, I'm alive. I'm here. Like, It's not me. We're trying to figure this out too. And she's like, hey, can you get Detective Frommy's gun back from the bat? and and he does, and he brings it back. And like, just as Sawyer finds out, like, well, Renee like rats her out unintentionally to Sawyer, and like, you lost your piece of the bat. Like, there's just some really good, like, there's some really good stuff in here. And like when the Titans are showing up, and they're like, no, he's alive, we've seen him, and everything else. And of course, and then all the male cops see Starfire, and they're all just like drooling over her. It's some good stuff. And you see, but again, it's all from the cops, and there's a reporter involved, and that's like has this relationship with them, and that's tenuous at best because he's trying to protect sources, and but he's trying to do right by them, and so the interesting relationship between the press and the cops on these kind of things that they're dealing with. So, well, and it's a really well told story. For sure.
And she's a gay woman working in this department too. And so she's often kind of feeling like she's got to protect Renee Montoya, but Renee Montoya wants to like just take the burden of the pressure on her for herself. Yeah. So there's this kind of unusual friendship I think I like between the two of them as well. So any more thoughts on Dead Robin? And the one shot that goes right after it is called Sunday Bloody Sunday. It ultimately feels like it has to do with a major DC event occurring in Gotham with like villains and heroes. It feels like an event. It feels like, what if the cops in New York got a one shot during the middle of like The King in Black? And what would that look like? Right. Yeah. And then, heroes and villains crashing down from the sky and lightning bolts strike, you get Shazam falling down and crushing a cab. And, it's like, it feels like ground zero for a DC event. Yeah. And you get the cop perspective, which is fun. But you have to just take it as that kind of a one shot. And it's got all the fun cameos.
Yeah. There's a bunch of fun cameos, and it's an interesting one-off. I'm glad it's just a one-off. Yeah. And it's really about like the cops themselves are basically so far out of, like, they're trying to protect people, but they're so far out of the league with what's happening here that like ultimately they end up just trying to protect themselves as much as anything. Yeah. And yeah. So it's okay. I mean, it fits, it works. It's not one of the better issues of the run, but it's not, but it works.
And the connection is that Crispus Allen and Renee are arguing over the fact that she's still keeping secrets from him regarding Corrigan and about the issues that she's having.
How he got off, like how the bullet suddenly showed back up.
And you're following the two of them as they deal with this situation in Gotham, because at the beginning is them arguing in the car, and then the car gets hit by Billy Batson. He crashes into their car and totals it, and then flies off and does his superhero thing, and they're left kind of piecing this whole event together from their perspective. And again, lots of weird villains and hero cameos, but at the core of it is Crispin Allen and Renee Montoya not trusting each other 100%, and him wanting to help her and her not letting him in, which leads to the final three issue Corrigan storyline, where now Corrigan is back and Renee is like, I'm just done with this guy. He needs to pay for what he's done. Well, and it's an interesting conclusion, because I could see people hating this finale because it has no real resolution.
No, I got to the end and I was like, what the?
I mean, I'd love to hear your feelings, because I've read it 3 times now. I would love to hear your thoughts.
So I got to the end of this, and we get the final story arc, and we get basically her partner finally finds out what she did in order to try to get the evidence she needed to get him off of the, for the shooting. Right. And like they're arguing back and forth because he's like, you shouldn't have done it. You should have let me, like, you shouldn't let him get off. he needs to go to jail, and if I had to pay for that, that was fine. And like she's like, no, I would never do that. Like so, there's a little bit of but basically what it comes down to, like she's got some guilt and she's struggling just with her anger and everything that's happened to her. She's struggling, and she's sort of struggling because she's losing him.
Yeah,
because he has got sort of survivor's guilt because he knows that him getting free has allowed this guy who's causing all these problems to continue to do what he's doing. So he goes after him, and we get if you're looking for a happy ending, this is not a happy ending to this story at all.
No.
And, and Renee almost basically like goes to just kill Corrigan in cold blood, basically, because it looks like he's going to get off again. Or is going to get off again.
He is, because obviously now I know that he ultimately becomes the Spectre or something. It's like,
yeah. So
his journey is going left, and her journey towards the question is going right.
Yeah, and this is basically in which, like, knowing that where her journey goes later. But yeah, it's basically the book ends with her turning in her badge and walking out.
Yeah,
and like that she's like, I can't do this anymore, and so which is basically setting up eventually her journey to be the question.
Which is why I love it. I will say, having the first time I read it, I was very much like, I get it. Noir doesn't necessarily have to have an ending, and these cases are ongoing and all these kinds of things. Yeah. But I wanted a resolution more than this. I certainly wanted Corrigan to frickin' pay.
Yeah.
And not knowing that he is connected to the Spectre and all these other things, I was like, I wanted her to give her, lay my justice upon you kind of moment and put him down. And the tragedy of Alan and kind of what goes on there, I felt like I wanted more. But having read it a few times, and I will say what brought me to this was all the stuff I'd read with Renee as the question and the stuff involved. So
which
for
I've
me,
not read hardly any of. Like
I
know only but I haven't read it. So
I've read about half of the like solo stuff and all of the wonderful Lois Lane stuff where she is the question all through that, which I freaking love. It's Greg Rucka yet again coming in to tell that story. I felt like that was the punctuation mark I needed, and I got the punctuation mark before I read the sentence.
Yeah. See, and I haven't read a lot of that, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I know that that's where she goes after this, but I don't. But I also think, like, at one point she was back with the Gotham police at one point too, and so that
well, she becomes the commissioner, I think.
At one point,
right? And that's obviously comic book continuity stuff that it's hard to work around. But for me, the punctuation to this sentence and the end of this story happens outside of Gotham Central when these characters live lives beyond the police department. And I'm okay with that because this gives me enough of the end of her journey in the department. And if you look at the whole volume as all these characters, but certainly Renee is the biggest arc, like it works for me.
Yeah.
From the Two-Face story to the end of the Corrigan story, that is a really wonderful masterpiece.
Yeah. No, it's really well done. I don't think I would have been like as frustrated if it had just kept going in terms of like Renee walks away and then we just like we keep telling Gotham Central stories or whatever, what we can do. Like the fact that a book like this from DC got 40 issues is a minor miracle. Like but it goes to how well Brubaker and Rucka and Michael Lark made this, how good it is. Like that they got 40 issues to play with characters that really don't matter, like really had never mattered before.
Sure.
Like Montoya was basically a throwaway detective character that showed up as Bullock's partner and then got a few little beats in like Batman the Animated Series. You see her a couple of times there.
And Maggie Sawyer was created by Byrne and was a side small character in the police department and is now given and is now given a bigger story here, so I think a lot, and I have none of that knowledge. For me, they all exist except for Bullock, who I know so much from the animated series. they all exist just within this tome.
Yeah.
So for
Well,
me,
everybody
I
else
love
is,
that.
Like, I didn't know, like, before I read this, the only two characters that I knew anything about were Montoya and Sawyer. Like, the only two characters I knew anything about that really are main characters of this, or of the detectives. Obviously, Bullock makes an appearance, but it's very brief.
Right. Yeah.
Now, when we read Catwoman of East End, Christmas Allen shows up in that. Like we saw him during that, like a couple of times during that book, like in things that were crossed over. Of course, that was right at the same time. And so there was, but yeah, it's, if you like the world of Batman at all, then I think you're going to love this book. Like
100%.
Yeah.
What is up, Matt? The boy who had 7 is here. What's going on, Matt? Good to see you, my friend. Yeah, and I think that's my biggest, recommendation is, if you like the animated series, if you're a fan of like detective stories, noir stories, crime stories like you see on television, Law and Order, CSI, NYPD Blue. This is going to connect all those dots. Your comic, peanut butter and jelly, your comic love and your detective love, and we're going to put it all together, and you're going to get something very entertaining out of this.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend it on all those levels, and that it's just top tier creators. You know, and they're really doing something interesting here. The ending is abrupt and unfinished, but I think in the way that all these cases will continue well beyond this
it's
single
unfinished
volume.
in the way that any sort of like you get story arcs that end, but it's unfinished in a way that works for the fact that all these characters are going to keep going. This world keeps going. It keeps going forever. Like, DC Comics isn't going anywhere. Like,
right.
Yeah. We get an unfinished story here in terms of what's going to happen with Renee. And you just talked about it. Like, the whole thing that comes after this is her journey. Basically, the Question finds her as she's like working things, and she basically starts grooming her to take over for him. And her journey to being the Question, and then and all this kind of stuff. And so all of these characters like have additional journey that's going to happen just in comics. And Brubaker and Ruckatel and Lark tell a great story here of just like take Gotham and just like ignore the cape. Like, the capes are all there, but how do these people actually deal with the fact that they have to deal with the Joker and Batman, and like,
absolutely,
like a lot of them are just like, several of these cops, and these are good cops, are like, is Batman any better than any of these crazies that we're dealing with?
I mean, in the Dead Robin storyline, they're often saying, like, even if he didn't kill Robin, if this is the real Robin and he's dead, he should be charged with negligence.
Yeah.
Like, he deserves to be a suspect on any given level if this is a real Robin.
Yeah.
So yeah, really great stuff from that standpoint. Highest recommendation. Definitely check it out. And among the Omnis that we've read, would rank very highly for me.
Yes, for sure.
And also makes me excited for you to dive into the same Brubaker Lark Daredevil omnibus
Except
story.
I can't get it.
Except that you can't buy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's awaiting you on the Daredevil side is now Daredevil's in prison, and who's going to get him out but Brubaker and Lark.
Yeah. So the fact that I probably should buy the second one just so I have it whenever the first one comes back in print.
Right.
Fair. But yeah, the first one is out of print. I cannot find it for less than like $250, $300, and it's just like,
yeah.
So there's a little frustration there because it was in print when I bought the first Bendis one, and then
See, even Matt, he knows what's up. But Matt, if you haven't read Gotham Central and you love that Daredevil, you should get Gotham Central. I think you would absolutely be ecstatic about it. As a guy who can appreciate Batman and those creators, it's the same creative duo, and they're slaying it here in the Batman universe.
Yeah.
It gives me like a slightly more adult Batman the Animated Series vibe, and I think they execute it supremely well.
For sure.
Any final thoughts, JP, on this omnibus? Now that we're at 1 and 10 minutes.
I mean, I think I just gave him. In terms of just, it's really, really well told. It gives you a unique perspective on Gotham, on dealing with the Bat and dealing with these characters. Like we get Freeze, we get Two-Face, we get the Joker, we get Poison Ivy, we get Mad Hatter, we get, you know, a bunch of the villain Penguin. They all kind of show up, but none of them are main parts of the story necessarily. None, like the Bat makes an appearance throughout the story, but it's never from his perspective. It's always from these cops. Yep. And they're trying to balance trying to be a cop in this crazy city and dealing with all the ridiculousness that comes with the Bat and with Gotham. So,
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Gag, this is our first real Omni in the Batman universe. I'm glad it was this one, really special, and sits on my shelf. I often count it among my favorite Batman stories, despite the fact that, like JP, who just released his list of his favorite Batman stories, counts this as adjacent because, again, Batman's such a small part in the overall storyline. Yeah. And get out of here with this Lola Lasagna stuff. This guy.
Yeah, I did. I debated on how to do that when I did that list. I'm like,
it's tricky, right?
Yeah. Do I just include anything Gotham? Or do I like put some of these ones that are other characters to the side and just like do Bat stories? And so, yeah, because if I had done, if I'd included stories like this in terms of in that Bat list, like completely, you're looking at probably like 5 or 6 somewhere. Now that I've read the whole Omni, like it wouldn't rate quite that high from the beginning. But like, because I'd only read this before, like reading this, it wouldn't rank that high. Because when I ranked it when we got done with like our Gotham Cities, it was like 11 or 12 or something like that. Having read the whole arc now, like this 40-issue arc, which is most of those stories don't get that long, probably would be, you know, just outside the top 5 maybe for me. But oh, you have frozen. Are you still there, John? We're right at the end.
and worthy of the spot. Like ultimately, I think now I'm barely here, just hanging on tooth and nail.
You're back. I got you now. You're back.
I'm barely here, but I totally agree with you. It ranks really highly with me, and ultimately your top 5 mirrors a lot of my top 5. A lot of the same stories. I wish this one could easily be considered, and I understand why it wouldn't be because of the fact that Batman isn't prominent, and that's a completely fair criticism.
I don't know. It was just the way I did it. there's no, you know.
But the links to JP's channel are down below. So if you want to check out his list of the best Batman stories, go over there. Click the link, hop over and check it out because I think it's the kind of content I love to find. And I believe I left a comment when I watched it.
You did. You disagreed with me on several things. So yeah.
But number 1 and 2 are hard to argue with. I think you and I have always, it's kind of like 1 and 2, and then everything after is
everything else you can kind of
messed about.
How recently have I read it? What kind of movie was I?
Yeah. Right. And also Scott Snyder.
So here's the thing. Like I will say, like I know, I think,
but one of the ones you mentioned, I've still never read. So
yeah, Court of Owls is really good, and then after that, it goes to crap. Black Mirror takes place before like Court of Owls and any of that when he first started writing it, and technically, like I included it because it's a Batman story, but that's a Dick Grayson Batman story, and it is so, and it's Dick and Barbara and kind of your introduction to James Gordon Jr. And I really enjoy that story. So
sure, that makes sense. All right, so folks, now that you're done with this, go on over there, check out that. As those of you, and I know there's a small group of you that follow us from Omnibus to Omnibus and want to know what's coming up next, we are reading more Bendis over on the Marvel side. We're doing the new Avengers volume number 1, the first omnibus of that phenomenal Bendis run that begins with the storyline Breakout, where we get to see I don't want to spoil. Oh, JP hasn't started it yet, so maybe I don't spoil.
No, I haven't even taken the plastic off yet. So
okay, it begins with an exciting prison break storyline that I won't ruin too much here. But I'm a big Bendis in that era fan, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it. But that's what's coming up next on this on these omnibus review shows.
And we're getting called out in the chat at the moment.
I mean, as normal.
On our next Omni, that we're not going back so much.
We've got to do a Marvel, and then we'll come back. And yes, we do owe you a Wonder Woman volume after this. So I would not be surprised if it's the second Perez volume that comes across. That's where we're going next. So don't worry, Ryan, we still got you. And at the end of the month, somewhere, I think I'm doing a show with this gentleman to do our next Avengers versus JLA. So that's coming up at some point too. But we're going to get out of here. We've been a little bit longer than I expected, but it was a lot of good stuff to cover, and I really appreciate everybody coming. JP's already unwrapping our next read, so be prepared. Sometime across the next month, we will be discussing that book right there. Sure. But thanks, everybody, for coming by. I appreciate all the comments, the likes, and everything like that. And make sure you're subscribed to this guy, and we'll be back again soon. Peace.